But hang on, because researchers in Turkey now claim they found indisputable evidence that the story of Noah's Ark was not a cautionary tale about the consequences of forsaking God, but a verifiable historical event.
A machine that doesn't believe in anything just found right angles, underground, inside a boat-shaped depression on a Turkish mountain. The machine doesn't care about the Bible, it doesn't care about geology, it measures. And what it measured 8 to 20 feet below the surface were angular structures that have no natural explanation anyone has fully agreed on. That's what we're here to look at today. A boat shape, on a mountain, 515 feet long, buried in the earth of eastern Turkey, 29 kilometers south of Mount Ararat, nearly 2,000 meters above sea level, pointed at one end, blunt at the other. It has no right to exist there. And yet there it is. This is not a story about faith. It's not a story about religion or creationism or any particular worldview. It's a story about data, about machines that measure things, about soil samples and radar pulses, and the question that even the most determined skeptics have not been able to fully silence. What is that shape doing on that mountain? Here's the thing about May 19th, 1948. Nobody was looking for Noah's Ark that day. 3 earthquakes had just torn through eastern Turkey consecutive, heavy, the kind that rearranged the earth rather than just shake it. Rain followed. And when the water and the movement stopped, something was visible in the terrain of Mount Ararat that hadn't been visible before. The hillside had shifted just enough, exposed just enough. The air up here is cold and thin. The mountain is indifferent. And in the silence after the earthquakes, a Kurdish shepherd named Reşit Sarihan looked at a hillside and saw something he couldn't name. He didn't know what it was. He just knew it was strange. The shape of it, the size of it. He told people. People came. The word spread slowly, the way words spread in a mountain village in eastern Turkey in 1948, which is to say, not fast, not far, not yet. It took a camera in the sky to change that. October 1959. Captain İlhan Durupinar is a NATO aerial cartographer. His job is to photograph the terrain of eastern Anatolia military mapping, nothing more. He develops his photographs in a dark room somewhere, the chemical smell, the red light, the slow materializing image, and in one frame, there it is. A boat-shaped impression in the earth, unmistakable enough that he cannot move past it. He reports it. The image reaches the American press. Lifetime's magazine publishes it in 1960. And suddenly, the whole world is looking at a shepherd's mountain. The formation would carry Durupinar's name from that point forward. Now here is where the data starts. Because once researchers arrived, they didn't just look at the shape, they measured it. The formation is 515 feet long, 157 meters, if you prefer. In the book of Genesis, chapter 6, God gives Noah very specific dimensions for the vessel he is told to build. 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits tall. The Egyptian royal cubit, the ancient unit of measurement, most commonly associated with the biblical world, converts 300 cubits to exactly 515 feet. Not approximately, exactly 515 feet. The formation, 515 feet. The biblical vessel, same number, same unit, same earth. Now, you could call that a coincidence. Plenty of serious scientists do, and we'll get to them fully, fairly, without flinching, because their arguments matter. But that number, that exact, unreduced, unrounded number, is the thing that kept researchers coming back to this site for 70 years. And in October 2019, they brought a machine. Ground-penetrating radar. You may have seen it used at Stonehenge, where it found evidence of buried structures that rewrote how we understood the monument, or at Pompeii, where it revealed rooms no excavator had touched, or at Giza, where it mapped voids beneath the plateau that are still not fully explained. The technology works like this. A device sends radar pulses into the ground. Those pulses bounce back differently depending on what they hit: rock, air, organic material, water. The machine reads the return signals and builds a picture of what lies beneath the surface. Without touching it, without moving a grain of soil. It doesn't interpret. It doesn't believe anything. It measures. In October 2019, a team from Topa 3D, an Oregon-based scanning company, arrived at the Durupinar Formation. This is important. The operators had never heard of this site. They had no religious position, no archaeological theory, no stake in the outcome. They were scanning technicians. They had a machine and a job. Picture them setting up their equipment on the hillside. No agenda, probably thinking about lunch, running a routine scan. They were surprised by what came back. The data was reanalyzed in 2023 using advanced imaging software. What the scans showed running through the interior of the formation is this: a central corridor, 234 feet long, running the full interior length of the structure. Lateral corridors branching off to the sides. Right angles, geometric, angular structures buried 8 to 20 feet below the surface. And 3 distinct horizontal layers. 3 layers. Genesis, chapter 6, verse 16. God's instruction to Noah: make lower, second, and third decks. 3 decks, 3 layers. Now, natural geological formations do sometimes produce linear features. They sometimes produce repeated layering. But orthogonal angles, true right angles in a formation like this, at this depth, in this rock type, that combination is, as the researchers put it, uncommon in natural geological processes. The lead researcher, Andrew Jones, has been studying this site since the early 1990s. He now lives in Turkey full-time. He is not a detached academic, he has a position. But listen to how he describes what the scans show. These are not random shapes in the mud flow. The presence of hallways and room-like structures points to a man-made origin for the boat shape. Man-made. Not divine, not miraculous. Man-made, which is, of course, exactly what the Ark would have been if it existed. A human construction, built from timber, by a man following instructions. Now, the machine found shapes, but shapes can be argued. What came next was harder to argue. September 2024. A research team collects 22 soil samples at the Durupinar Formation, half from inside the formation's outline, half from directly outside it, the surrounding terrain, geologically similar, same elevation, same exposure. The samples go to a certified laboratory. Independent analysis. The results come back in December 2024. The organic matter content inside the formation is double what it is outside. Potassium levels inside are significantly elevated. The pH is measurably different. And then this. Marine deposits, clay-like material consistent with deep water sediment, mollusk shells. At 2,000 meters above sea level, look, marine deposits at altitude are not, in themselves, impossible. Tectonic uplift can carry ancient seabed material to high elevation over geological time. That's real. That's science. The skeptics will point to that, and they're right too. But the soil scientist on the Noah's Ark scans team, William Crabtree, frames the organic and chemical findings in a very specific way. If this was a wooden vessel and the wood had rotted over time, we would expect to see increased potassium levels, changes in pH, and higher organic content. And that's exactly what we find. He is not saying at times is times wood. He is saying, if at times were times wood, this is what the chemistry would look like. And this is what the chemistry looks like. There is one more data point. It is, in some ways, the strangest of all, because it requires no instrument to see it. Every autumn reliably, repeatably, year after year, the grass growing inside the boundary of the formation turns lighter and yellower earlier than the grass growing outside it. The surrounding vegetation stays green longer. The interior vegetation dies first. The research team believes this indicates open, hollow cavities beneath the surface voids that affect the moisture available to the roots above them. You can see it from a distance. Every year, same pattern, same boundary, same edge, where one grass becomes another. No machine, no laboratory, just the land, telling a story it has apparently been telling for a very long time. Before we go further, let's step back, because the flood is not just a biblical story. It never was. The Times Epic of Gilgamesh Times is one of the oldest written works in human history. Scholars date it to somewhere between 2100 and 1800 BCE. That places it, in most interpretations, 1,000 years before the Book of Genesis reached its current written form. In the Gilgamesh epic, a man named Utnapishtim is warned by the gods that a great flood is coming. He is given instructions to build a massive vessel. He loads it with animals and his family. The rains come. The waters rise. He sends out birds to search for land. A raven, a dove, a swallow. Eventually, the vessel comes to rest on a mountain. The waters recede. Life resumes. The parallels are not subtle. They are structural. Beat for beat. Same vessel, same flood, same birds, same mountain. The Sumerian King List, a text that records the reigns of ancient Mesopotamian rulers, treats the flood as a historical event that literally interrupted the line of kings. Before the flood, there were rulers. After the flood, there were different rulers. The flood is not metaphor in that text. It is a historical dividing line. In ancient India, the texts describe Manu warned by Vishnu in the form of a great fish that a deluge is approaching. He builds a vessel. He survives. The waters recede. He becomes the father of a renewed humanity. In ancient Greece, it is Deucalion who builds a chest, rides out the flood sent by Zeus, and lands on a mountain when the waters fall. Among the Aztec peoples, Nata is warned by the god Tezcatlipoca to hollow out a great cypress log and survive within it while the world floods. 200 separate flood traditions across every inhabited continent, across cultures that had zero contact with each other, separated by oceans and mountain ranges and thousands of years. 200 versions of the same story. Now, let that sit for a moment. You have two choices when you look at that number. Either you believe that 200 independent cultures, none of them in communication with each other, all independently, invented the exact same catastrophic story with the same structure. the same survival mechanism, and the same ending. Or something happened. Something large enough that the memory of it survived in oral tradition, in written record, in ceremony, in myth, across every branch of the human family. Something with water. And here is the detail that lands differently once you know it. The peak immediately beside the Durupinar Formation, the mountain that rises directly adjacent to the boat-shaped impression, has a name. The local Kurdish population has called it Al-Judi for generations. In Turkish, Kudida. Al-Judi is the name used in the Quran for the mountain where the Ark came to rest. Not Mount Ararat, not the peak that tourists photograph, not the summit that Christian tradition typically points to. Al-Judi, right there, next to the formation, called that long before any modern researcher arrived with a radar machine, as if something was waiting to be found. Now, I promised you the full case against, and I meant it, because here is the thing about intellectual honesty, it only counts when it's inconvenient. The skeptics here are not fringe voices. They are not people arguing from ignorance. Some of them are geologists. Some are archaeologists. And one of them, this is the part that should stop you, was the man who first made the public case that this site was Noah's Ark. He changed his mind. Dr. Lawrence Collins is a geologist at California State University, Northridge. He is not a creationist. He has no religious investment in the site being natural. In fact, his scientific opposition to creationist claims is well documented. He looked at Durupinar with the tools of geology and reached a clear conclusion. The boat shape, he argues, is the result of a doubly plunging syncline, a geological structure where rock layers fold and erode in a way that naturally produces an elongated, tapered landform. The shape, in other words, is what this type of formation looks like when erosion and mudflow work on it over thousands of years. The metallic readings some researchers pointed to as evidence of iron fittings, Collins says those are limonite and magnetite, naturally occurring iron-bearing minerals common in volcanic terrain. The right angles? Collins calls these orthogonal joints, fracture patterns that develop in rock as it cools and stresses over geological time. They produce right angles, naturally. Without a carpenter, his position is plain. This is a geological structure with a geological explanation, and the appearance of design is exactly that, an appearance. Now here is where it becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Dr. Andrew Snelling is a geologist at Answers in Genesis. He is a young Earth creationist. He believes in a global flood. He believes in the literal Noah's Ark. He also says this is not it. Snelling points to the elevation. The Durupinar Formation sits approximately 1,000 meters times below, times the surrounding mountain peaks. Genesis chapter 8 verse 4 says, "The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat." Mountains, plural, high terrain, not a valley, not a slope, 1,000 meters below the ridgeline. He also points to the volcanic basement beneath the site. The bedrock geology of this area is volcanic in origin, and in Snelling's geological framework, that volcanic activity postdates the flood timeline entirely. The ground the formation sits on, he argues, couldn't have been there when the flood ended. A committed creationist geologist, a man who times this to be the Ark, saying, it's not. That is not a small thing. And then there is David Fasold. In 1988, Fasold published Times the Ark of Noah, Times a full-length book, building the case that Durupinar was the genuine article. He was a believer, an advocate. He promoted the site publicly and passionately. In September 1994, Fasold visited the formation alongside Australian geologist Ian Plimer. Plimer had serious doubts. Fasold listened, looked again, measured again. He changed his mind. In 1996, Fasold and Collins co-authored a paper. The title leaves no room for misreading. Bogus Noah's Ark from Turkey, exposed as a common geologic structure. The man who wrote the book arguing it was the Ark co-wrote the paper arguing it wasn't. And, as recently as 2025, Turkish geologist Dr. Eşref Atabey released a full-length book reaching the same conclusion. Geological structure, formed by landslides, fully explainable without invoking human construction. Peer-reviewed, detailed, specific. I'm not going to tell you how to weigh those arguments. That's not my job here. But I want you to sit with this fully, not rush past it. Two geologists, one anti-creationist, one creationist, reaching the same conclusion from opposite directions. The man who championed the site for years, recanting. A 2025 book-length geological argument against it. These are serious voices, trained scientists, with serious arguments. They may be right. The GPR operators were neutral, that matters. These were not researchers from the Noah's Ark scans team. They were not sent to confirm a theory. They were an Oregon-based scanning company hired to do a job. They arrived without prior knowledge of the site's significance. They had no stake in the results. They were surprised. That surprise is documented. It is part of the record. When a neutral instrument operator, someone who has run these machines across many sites, in many countries, on many projects, encounters results that surprise them, that is different from a believer finding what they expected to find. The soil results came from a certified laboratory. 22 samples, collected by the research team, yes, but analyzed independently. The organic matter, doubling inside the formation boundary, is a chemical measurement. The potassium elevation is a chemical measurement. The pH difference is a chemical measurement. Chemistry does not have a theological position. The finding is statistically consistent across all samples from inside the boundary. That consistency, the fact that it holds across 22 separate collection points, rules out contamination and random variation as explanations. William Crabtree framed it carefully, and his framing matters. He didn't say, "This is wood." He described what the chemistry of rotted ancient wood would look like, and then noted that this is what the chemistry looks like. That is, a scientist being precise, not making a claim beyond his data, pointing at a pattern and letting it speak. The marine deposits at 2,000 meters above sea level exist regardless of what anyone believes about Noah. Geologists can explain how marine material reaches altitude through tectonic processes over long time periods. That explanation is available, and it may be correct, but the material is there: shells, clay consistent with deep water sediment. At 2,000 meters, the vegetation anomaly is repeatable. Every autumn, same pattern, same boundary. You can stand there and see it. It does not require a machine or a laboratory. Here is what I keep returning to. In any other archaeological context, anywhere else on Earth, if you had these data streams converging on a single site, excavation would already be underway. GPR, showing anomalous interior structures at depth. Soil chemistry consistently different inside a defined boundary versus outside it. Repeatable surface anomalies following the same boundary. Marine deposits at altitude. Dimensional match with an ancient text. If this were a suspected Roman fort excavation, if this were a potential Viking settlement excavation, if this were a possible Egyptian storage site excavation, the data profile that triggers serious archaeological investigation is present at this site. So why no excavation? The formation is in active earth flow. The ground moves seasonally, which complicates any excavation attempt. The winters here are brutal. The bureaucratic requirements for archaeological work in Turkey are significant. The site has protected status, and it sits close to the Iranian border, which adds layers of logistical and political complexity. Core drilling is planned a collaboration between the Noah's Ark Scans team and Turkish university partners at Aura Ibrahim Çeçen University and Istanbul Technical University. Non-destructive surveys must come first, but core drilling is the next step, and the window for that drilling is now open. When those cores come up, if they contain wood fiber from a structured object buried at depth, this debate will end. If they contain only volcanic rock and mudflow material, this debate will also end. Either answer is a real answer. Either answer changes something. This is what distinguishes science from speculation. The existence of a test that can actually settle the question. That test exists. It is being prepared. It has a timeline. We are, possibly, closer to an answer on this question than we have ever been. So here is where we are. A boat-shaped formation, 515 feet, exactly matching a biblical measurement, on a mountain named by the people who have lived beside it for generations, after the peak where the Ark came to rest. GPR scans showing internal structures consistent with a large constructed vessel, soil chemistry consistent with ancient rotted wood, repeatable vegetation anomaly following the formation boundary, marine deposits at altitude, and on the other side 2 credentialed geologists explaining the shape, the angles, and the readings as natural geological processes. A creationist geologist who believes in the Ark saying this isn't it. The man who wrote the book promoting the site, recanting, "We genuinely don't know." That's the honest answer. Anyone who tells you differently on either side is selling you something. The core drilling will happen. When those results are in, I will be here. I will cover them the same way I covered this. The data, the arguments, both sides, nothing hidden. If you want to be here, when that changes, you know what to do. But before you go, I want to hear from you directly. Yes or no? Do you believe this is really Noah's Ark? Tell me why. Drop it in the comments. I read every one. If this video made you think, the like button is right there. And those core drilling results, when they come, they'll be the next chapter. Waiting.